Okay, Giant team members, we're going to continue our discussion here of purpose statements and vision statements in relation to change by talking about the vision statement. And again, we've talked about vision statements in two previous classes, given examples of vision statements. But again, we're going to put this in the context of change and change management and what the importance of a vision statement is. And if you've read through the chapter, you see that a large part of the chapter is taken up by this discussion on the vision statement. So it is important when it comes to change. And in the last video, we'll talk about the three debates regarding vision statements and their importance and where they fit in the scheme of things with organizational change. And from those three debates, you could decide for yourself where they fall. But in this video lecture, we're just going to really just kind of hit on some definitions of vision statements, some characteristics of effective vision statements, and then how we should be looking at and writing these vision statements, what we should have in mind as we're going through them, especially when we're talking about change. So we could start with some definitions of change, which are on page 184 of your textbook. Kirkpatrick says a leader's statement of a desired long-term future state for an organization. So there, it's the leader's statement about the long-term future. Haynes talks about an image of an ideal future. It is aspirational and idealistic, a guiding star with dreamlike qualities. So there, that adds an element of kind of the dreamlike state of where we want to be. Alster says a picture of the future for our organization. That's pretty straightforward. Belgard and Rayner say a detailed description of a desired future that provides clarity as to how the organization will need to operate differently in order to meet the changing conditions of its markets, customers, and overall business environment. So that one really takes into consideration changing conditions and how the organization is going to need to operate, not how we're operating, but how we need to operate. So in that respect, that last definition by Belgard and Rayner, they're talking really about change, how the organization needs to change to get to where it is that we want to go. The others are just talking about an idealized state, a future state, aspirations. This one is saying, okay, we need to, here's what's going to need to change in order for us to get where we're going. Again, as with most things, we pull back a lot of our discussion from our second class. And vision statements really have two components, a cognitive component and an affective component. And as you could imagine, that those are elements of attitudes, right, along with behavioral. So it's the thinking part of it, the thinking about what's going on, and the emotional part of it. That appeals to our values and beliefs, and it provides motivation and commitment when implemented. So if there's a strong emotional component, you're adding in, motivation and commitment with that vision statement. On page 185, we talk about the components of an effective vision. It provides a clear sense of continuity of organizational identity, uses image-based rhetoric to paint a concrete picture of the future. It's future focused. What will our business be like in 5 or 10 years? It's directional, describes where the organization is going. It's clear and easy to understand. It's relevant. It reflects the past as well as current challenges. It's purpose driven. It's value based. It's challenging. We talked about stretch goals, set a high standard. It's unique. It's vivid, provides a striking mental image of the future. Remember when we talked about goal setting, we talked about vivid imagery, and we're drawn to the most vivid images. The more vivid you can make a vision statement, the better it's going to be. It's imaginable, it's desirable, it's feasible, it's focused, it's flexible, it's communicable. We could explain it in 5 minutes. All those last ones are from Cotter. So those are characteristics of an effective vision statement. A vision statement may need to highlight. Let me see if I could use some markers on this. Highlight the bad. create urgency. So a lot of times when we talk about vision statements, we use terms like aspirational and things like that. We may have to, you may have to point out the bad in order to create a sense of urgency. And that's the burning platform theory, in which we need to break with the past in order to create a brighter future for the organization. So we recognize what we're doing wasn't working, so we need to make sure we know that and highlight that in order to push for a better future. Vision statements can be tricky though, because ones that offer major changes may be threatening to employees. So you may have all this great, hey, look, here's what we're going to do, and here's the big changes that are coming. However, that may be threatening to employees and somewhat maybe demoralizing. Visions though should promote continuity and reduce uncertainty. So there's a bit of a balancing act there, right? Between here's what we're doing, we're going to keep doing that to some effect, but we are changing into a different direction for the future, and I need to somehow reduce the uncertainty about that by motivating and inspiring and trying to get people on board. So there's a tricky balance there of stressing changes, stressing maybe a new direction or new way of doing things, but also promoting this continuity and this vibe that yeah we're not if things are we're going to keep functioning as an organization. Just there might be some changes coming up as we're doing so. Vision statements, having a vision is often linked to why successful organizational change is achieved. And we'll talk about those three debates regarding vision and why visions are important to, at least if nothing else, be playing in the background and always be on people's mind. Lack of vision is frequently associated with organizational decline. The concept of vision is controversial because of cynicism that can exist around bland or too grandiose vision statements. So, there's some poorly written vision statements. Some are just, "Hey, we're going to be the best in the world!" Exclamation point, and then, those are a little bland, or even that one could be a little too grandiose, where you're overstepping a little bit of where it's probably not possible that you're going to do that. So you're really just creating a statement that really holds no merit or holds no weight. Visions are useful when they couple an engaging picture of the future with sufficient detail to be meaningful to targets of the future. So the way we write these, the way we explain these, the way we communicate these need to create that engaging picture, that vivid imagery with enough detail to outline the targets that we're trying to hit. Organizational change is linked to the image one has of managing change. So we talked about those images of change and the image some people have of managing change. And vision is commonly thought of as a guide for the organization in identifying the appropriateness of particular changes that are proposed. So, we're going to look at certain change projects. If that doesn't align with the vision of where we said we want to go, then it can be a guide as to maybe this isn't right for us or right for us right at this particular time. The image, the rhetoric, the words we use, the imagery we use around vision statements are important because we want to use that rhetoric to paint a concrete picture of the future, and that's Carton and Lucas in 2008. When we think about the future, this is just human beings in general. When we think about the future, we tend to use abstract concepts. It's hard for us to envision the future. It's hard for us to envision our future selves. We don't do a very good job with that. And we could demonstrate that if I say, think of yourself in retirement and what you're going to be doing and where you're going to be living. And it tends to be an abstract concept. We don't really have a really good, clear vision of the future. And there's a number of reasons why that's the case. But if we're using abstract rhetoric when we're constructing um, our vision statement, it leads to kind of like this blurry vision bias. and that's using abstraction, non-concrete terms, non-emotional terms. We're going to be the best of this, or we're going to be the best in that. Um, so we want to avoid that blurry vision bias. We want to use more of our experience-based system when we're talking about um, vision statements, because it's the way we process information about the world, and use real life imagery to do this. And when we do that, it goes back to some of those we talked about before. Seeing the customer smile as they eat in our restaurant. That's image based, right? We could see that. It's something that we have in terms of associative memory. It's something that we're familiar with, and we can conjure up in our minds. We could visualize. It's usually going to bring up or conjure up some types of emotion within us too. So something more concrete like that, some more of that, using that experience-based system, that law of associative memory system that we have, is a better way to write vision statements. And what leaders can do is they could use the temporal projection exercises, and all that is imagining yourself in 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 um, in the situation, and it's like our exercises we used in class too. We're picturing ourselves already accomplishing our goals, and what does it look like, and how does it feel to have done that. Leaders can use those same temporal projection exercises in order to come up with a more meaningful, uh, maybe more meaningful language or more meaningful imagery when they're coming up with their vision statements. So mentally projecting oneself to a moment in the distant future, akin to mental time travel, your book says, that targets the experience-based system rather than the meaning-based system. That meaning-based system, that first part of it tends to be a bit abstract. Rather than contemplate the distant future abstractly, these tactics impel leaders to imagine the future in vivid detail, as if they are directly observing a future scenario through firsthand observation. And again, that's exactly what we did in class number 2 when we were setting our goals and we were imagining our goals. Right? And I encourage you to continue to do that, because that really does paint a vivid picture. It draws us to that picture, and it conjures up emotion. So the exact same thing can be done when constructing a vision statement. Okay, so that's our second video in this lecture, just talking a little bit about the vision statement. Where are we going? What are some definitions of vision statements? What are characteristics of good vision statements? And then what is that meaning-based system versus that experience-based system? And how can managers use those temporal projection exercises in order to really project a vivid um, image and a realistic vision statement?